Welcome out to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of my favourite people and some old friends as well. Stephen Bowman, how are you?
I'm very well, rise and shine and wide awake.
Yes, you look it as well. Here we are then at this glorious St Pancras Hotel, and I was just talking to you then about when we first met, which was, I don't know, was it 10 years ago? It was a long time, in a posh hotel in Nottingham when you were first launching Blake.
It's coming up for about 8 years ago, in actual fact, and you can tell that by looking at me by the fact that there's grey coming out the bottom of my chin where I'm trying to grow a beard. But I was younger and much more fresh-faced at the time, and full of enthusiasm, which I'm happy to say 8 years in, this music industry thing hasn't dented, and I'm still loving it, enjoying it. So it's a great career to have.
You can become cynical, can't you? Because it's a tough business. I always think it's easy to get into, but it's not easy to stay in. To have one hit album, okay, everybody can do that after X Factor. Can they have the second? You went another way, didn't you? You just had pure talent and great songs, and hopefully the public will follow you, and they have.
Well, we've worked very, very hard, first and foremost, and over time we've changed and amended our style a little bit as well. When we first came out, we were known as a classical group, very much a pure classical group. And as time went on, we discovered that we were less a classical group and more of a harmony group in the traditional sense of the word. And as that happened, as we discovered that, we started to go to more towards contemporary sounding harmony. So we looked at groups like the King Singers, we looked at groups like the Letterman, for instance, and latterly the Bee Gees, and we thought, right, well, in actual fact, perhaps what we want to be doing isn't just pure classical, but it is updating the harmony sound. It hadn't been done for a while. There'd been lots of boy bands, but they'd all generally tended to sing in unison, whether it was Westlife or Take That or whoever else. So we wanted to do something different and bring this harmony sound up to date.
There's a great skill to that as well. I first saw you in this hotel and I said, okay then boys, sing if you can do it, and you did right away. You were pitch perfect. It's so difficult, isn't it, to find a synergy between three voices that actually works?
It's a very rare thing in actual fact. I mean, you can take three fantastic soloists from out in the music industry, try and stick them together, and it just won't work. Partly because it isn't just the music side of things, it's also about individual characters and moving together musically in the direction you want to. The lovely thing for Blake is that although we're all classically trained, having been to London Music Conservatoires, all of us always had a very strong interest in contemporary music, in pop music, rock music, electronica, and that's allowed us to develop and change over time rather than people fracturing off and saying, well, I want to do opera and I want to do rock and roll. The three of us are quite comfortable moving together as one.
Is it fun being you on the road? Because you've just done this big tour, which is about to come to an end in November. I'm sure you'll be doing your Christmas concerts again. Is it still fun standing on the stage as that threesome, bringing those harmonies together?
It's actually probably more fun now than it's ever been, mainly because we were a four originally, as some people may spot as they look around our website. But when we became a three, that required a massive change in many ways, not just musically. We had to change everything from 4-part harmony down to 3, which meant refining and distilling what we did. But it also changed what we were like on stage as well. For some reason now, with the 3 characters on stage, you see our individual personalities a lot more, and we have the ability to banter and be a lot more silly and stupid and just be ourselves. I think for some reason when we were a 4 originally and in earlier albums, we took ourselves quite seriously, which is great for the music, but not so much fun for a live stage show. As time went on, I just think we just kind of grew into ourselves a little bit, and that was the advantage of being a group for a long time, is that you do have the ability to get old, grow into your own skin, and when you start getting up on stage, it's just an enjoyable process. You don't feel you're on show, you feel that you're there to entertain and have fun whilst you do it. Big difference.
What's interesting about this new album, which is called In Harmony, is that it's been paid for by your fans. If it weren't for them, you literally wouldn't be here. A lot of artists say that, but for you, it's the absolute truth, as it is for so many now. John Barrowman just did the same with his album. This new pledge way of getting stuff made seems to be the future, because the people behind the music, these big producers, are not putting money into it anymore, are they? They're not gambling on anybody.
They're not. I think what's interesting is we're actually going back to a period of music much akin to the 20s and 30s, when patrons were involved a lot more with artists. The music industry became very corporate from the 70s onwards, and people got very used to the idea that a large organisation would pay for the little artists to make their albums. And over time, I think certain artists got so used to that they'd forgotten that things had been done in a different way before. And a couple of albums ago, when we started wanting to be independent and we moved away from Universal and we started our own record label, we started to understand the challenges they face, which is albums are expensive things to make. They're not cheap. A lot of people assume that, because there are albums made in bedrooms these days, that's how all albums can be made. Unfortunately, when you're using orchestras and when you're using world-class musicians, it's never quite that easy and that simple. So as we started to develop in this independent route, we started needing to look for ways of bringing investment, not just from investors, traditional investors, but for those who are actually going to listen to the music. It's very probably true to say that a lot of people invested into albums, and a lot of corporations who've invested into albums have never actually listened to the very music they're investing into, and I think that's quite a sad thing in a way. Whereas the people who've invested into this album, those people who've done it on Pledge Music, and this is fans and supporters from all over the world, not just from the UK, these people have an emotional investment in this album. They've helped us choose songs for the album. They've come into recording sessions with us whilst we've recorded. They've been there at some of the most instrumental stages of making this album over the last 2 years. So they can very rightly feel responsible for it. And that's obviously in addition to our record label, Infinity, and Adrian Munsey, who masterminds the album making process and puts a great deal of his own time investment into it. But the fans themselves can rightly be very proud of this album in the way that we are.
And again, they get up and close and personal with you regularly through this, because part of Pledge is that you have to offer stuff in return for the money. This afternoon you're going to go baking with them.
We are. We suddenly decided that given we have the name Blake, it worked very well into the title, The Great British Blake Off. And I should warn you and warn everyone else that we have no baking skills whatsoever, which will only make this experience even funnier, I think. So we're off to a cooking school up in North London called Bake with Maria, who specialise in fine cakes and wonderful delicacies. So we're going to be baking for 3 hours straight, 3 teams, 3 Blake boys and 6 ladies who've very kindly supported us. And by the end of that 3 hours, we will find out which of us is the least terrible baker. I think that's the aim anyway.
I'm sure you've seen on my CV, I am a master baker, and you should have invited me. I could have been of great use.
Well, we have another one of these coming up, in actual fact, 1st of December, and I know that we have one space free. So if you feel like coming down to London and having your microphone on as the fun unravels, or flour goes everywhere, or eggs, or whatever it might be, you'll be very welcome.
I can put the holes in the donuts. I'm not going to tell you how, but I can. This new album is wonderful, and again, you're not sticking stuff in that's going to be unpalatable to them or not wanted. I mean, the tracks on this album are all great, from To Love Somebody, Love Me Tender, The Prayer, which is probably one of the greatest songs ever recorded, and of course You Raise Me Up. I mean, you get what it says on the tin, great harmonies, sung by great guys who know how to sing. Well,
in terms of repertoire on the CD, we know that there are staple songs within our genre that people want us to hear. And it's quite difficult when you're presented with a song like You Raise Me Up, because it's been performed so many damn times. And there are probably 500, 600 covers out there. So when we approached it was actually with an eye on a charity record that we were working on at the time. It was for the Sing to Beat Breast Cancer initiative, which is effectively a choir of 20 ladies, all of whom were battling breast cancer at the time, and I'm sad to say a number of whom have not been able to get through that journey. But none of them had ever sung in a choir before. They all had a latent interest in singing, and Camilla Kerslake, who we duetted with on that song, she had come out of the music industry after being Brit nominated and having an incredible career, and then stopped all of a sudden because her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. So she spent 2 years bringing her to full health, and she is now, which is wonderful. But as part of that, she wanted to celebrate the work that the great Marston had done, for instance, and also the breast cancer campaign. So we put that one single together, which was really to show one of the most important things with breast cancer, and also with cancer in general, is keeping positivity. A lot of people, when they get news of that type, just crumble internally, and we found that it was a very strong cathartic experience for women to come together and to sing on a record like this. And the song choice just seemed an obvious one, even though it's for many they'll feel it's a bit of a laboured song choice. For us, with those ladies, it was absolutely right. And the combination of beautiful orchestra, this choir of 20, and the harmony vocals and the duet vocals between the artists, it just worked very well. We performed it here in London at the Breast Cancer Campaign Ball. And genuinely there was not a single dry eye in the entire house, and there was 4,000 people, and so a lot of tears and a lot of Kleenex. So we were delighted it had that effect.
And a good song is a good song. I mean, it may have been done 500 times, but there's a reason, because it's a great song and people want to hear it, so why not put it on the new album? For you, is it still thrilling, the fact that you're still here talking to me now, you're still relevant, you've got the new album, so many come and go, you get to perform these concerts with huge orchestras, which is, again, no greater thrill for an artist. I mean, most people can't afford that. Most people don't get that liberty. You do.
I mean, it's the funniest thing, actually. I mean, we are coming up to 8 years this April. And as a group, we were chatting in the car between gigs the other day about the months before Blake started and the other things that we were doing at the time. And Ollie was a tutor, school tutor, and Jules at that time was an out-of-work actor. I was selling computers, and they were very different lives and very different lifestyles. And all of us had studied music, all of us had hoped that might one day be a career. I'd pretty much given up on that ever being a career. I'd been 6 years out of music, and although at home I was a songwriter and a jingle writer amongst other things, I never expected to be behind a microphone in front of an audience again. And to be 8 years into this, and you're quite right, there are things that we're doing that other people dream of. I mean, we just came back from Moscow. We had the Moscow Philharmonic Orchestra backing us. There's 90 orchestral players, a choir of 120, and this was in the Moscow House of Music, which is a £70 million concert hall, considered to be one of the finest in the world. And there we were, these three kind of quasi-classical, quasi-pop harmony singers, entertaining a packed house, and at the end of the evening there were 3 standing ovations, something we've never had before. And I know at the moment that happened, when we kind of came in for a third standing ovation, and we definitely didn't feel that we warranted it at that point. But when it happened, I know that the 3 of us were looking into each other's eyes, and there was definitely moistness there, because you never really truly believe that you're worthy of those situations. And 8 years in, I still don't. But I love the fact that people enjoy what we do, and it keeps me in a job which stops me from singing in the shower and allows me to do it on a stage, which is pretty cool. It takes a long time to build any business, which effectively Blake is. It's a small cottage industry, for want of a better word. And we put a lot into it. We spend a lot of time making the albums, planning the concerts around the world, and each one of the 3 of us has specific tasks within that. So some of us are very good at social media, understanding how to keep in constant communication with all of our fans and supporters around the world. Other people love the written music side of things, so they are the ones communicating with the orchestras we work with, the choirs we work with, whilst others are developing the opportunities to go to, for instance, in 2 weeks' time we're off to South Korea. And that, for us, it's keeping everybody busy and keeping things moving that allows it to feel that we're always making progress and developing as a group. And who knows, it could be 5 years from now, I'd hope we're doing the same thing, but just in many new countries we haven't been to before.
Congratulations to you and the boys. Blake of the Big Band, the new album is in harmony, and you've always been very generous to me with your time, and always give great interviews. Stephen, thank you very much for coming to see me.
That's an absolute pleasure. And if I'm not sure when this goes out, but if it is before November 22nd, would sincerely like to invite anybody who'd like to go to Union Chapel in London. It's in Islington. It's probably one of the most stunning venues in London, an octagonal, beautiful chapel where we'll have around 1,000 people or so for a big concert on November 22nd, Saturday at 7:30 p.m.
Great. And your website?
And the website hasn't changed in 8 years. It's still www.blakeofficial.com.
Great. Nice to talk to you. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much.